Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. I'm on camera today. Just felt like a good day to be on camera. So, welcome, Taurus, to your new moon forecast. This is where we go over the main astrological themes for the next 2 weeks, from new moon to full moon, for Taurus rising, Taurus moon, and Taurus sun. Of course, if you have strong Taurus in other parts of your chart, if you're here just to learn astrology and understand the basic transits of the next 2 weeks, there's always something here of value for all of us. So, but we are going to be looking at the Taurus rising chart in particular. In fact, maybe I should bring that chart up right now. While I'm talking to you. So welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate all of you so very much. And of course, if you're new here, thanks for stopping by. And you guys know the drill. If you find this content valuable and helpful, feel free to interact with it in some way. That way it does at least signal to the algorithm on whatever platform you're watching this on or listening that this is content worth sharing with a larger audience. So, my friends, Taurus in particular, welcome to your new moon. So, the story really starts for you guys, I think, in my opinion, with the Scorpio full moon. So, we'll just do a little bit of a recap here. So, you may have already watched the Scorpio full moon forecast that was posted previously on the channel, whatever channel you're watching this on. You may have listened to it. Quick astro tip here, friends. You cannot get away from the sign that is opposite of you, whatever that sign is. And for the Taurus folks, you cannot get away from Scorpio because it is your antithesis. It is the duality or bipolar point that you must integrate in order to achieve and experience wholeness in terms of who you are, how you feel if you're a moon in Taurus, and certainly how you express yourself if you're a sun in Taurus. So you may want to go back and listen to that if you haven't already, because Scorpio is just as much a part of you, Taurus, as the Taurus part is. So we'll go and do a little bit of recap of the Scorpio full moon, just kind of remind ourselves of where we're coming out of, and then we're going to look at the main themes for the next 2 weeks. So Taurus. General themes here for Taurus people, and I'm sure I'm not telling you anything you don't already know about yourself. This is fixed earth, right? Taurus is the living soil, the salt of the earth, the resonance, the wave function as it is of life, right? The living soil, as I said. So Taurus people tend to be very dependable. They tend to be very patient. They are slow to move. Sometimes they're very lazy. Sometimes they're very stubborn, right? There is a spectrum of experience with all of these signs and the archetypes associated with them. So Taurus people go from being patient and dependable. They tend to be very much of finer tastes, right? So they're Venus ruled, which, by the way, Taurus, if you haven't already noticed, Venus, your ruling planet, is now home in her sign of Taurus. She also rules Libra. That's another conversation of your 6th house of where we all get our shit together. But in the meantime, Taurus, this is about you as a person, the person that you project yourself into the world as, right? If you're a Taurus rising, if you're a Taurus moon, your internal landscape, your emotional landscape, how you tend to feel about things, where you're emotionally oriented. And if you're a Taurus sun, how you express yourself, right? The gift that is you coming into and out into expression. Out of all the signs that would struggle with the potential of rapid, unexpected, rebellious change, it's Taurus, right? So my friends, I just want to reiterate or iterate for the first time, if this is all new to you, that you are going to be going through this new moon cycle, and really the last lunar cycle that started with the eclipse, the solar eclipse, the full moon in Scorpio opposite of you, and now this new moon in Taurus, and all of the Taurus energy that is going to be popping off in the next 2 weeks, which we will go into. You are slated for a surge of new potential from the very essence of who you are. And like I said, for all of the signs, the Taurus people are probably the most resistant to change. This is why Taurus people tend to be very lazy. They don't like to be moved. But I will tell you what, that once you are moved, just like the earth is moving, just like the P waves or the seismic waves are moving through the plates of the planet. Once that happens, it is huge. And it's just like once you anger the bull, right? Once the bull is pushed to a point of moving, there is no stopping. So that is something to consider as well, that the surge of new potential out of the infinite ocean is something that cannot be stopped. And Taurus, I would say that much like the bull that you are, yes, you can be stubborn. Yes, you can be lazy and slothful at times, right? You don't want to be pushed. Well, you will be pushed. Uranus in your sign is going to be aspected quite strongly in the next 2 weeks, even in the next week, but certainly in the next 2 weeks. And if Uranus is the trigger, right? It is the aspect that turns on the machine. Pluto is the machine of destruction itself, which is in the sign of Aquarius, which is for the Taurus rising, is your 10th house, your career, your public profile, okay? Your contribution to society, the institutions that you contribute your resources and your labor to. Well, that's going through massive change, right? To say the least. And now that Pluto is retrograde, it is a fallow period, is an empty period. It's basically surveying the landscape of what's been destroyed. And so Taurus, you may have found that your public profile based on the institutions you contribute to is changing and going through a dying process, okay? And I do feel like that the full moon in Scorpio really highlighted the relationships and specifically who you are in those relationships, what has to be released within you in order for those relationships to change and vice versa, right? So that's kind of the recap. If you go back to the Scorpio full moon, you'll see, Taurus, that process has already begun, specifically around what in you has already died, what in you must be discarded, and what is the void that you need to really embrace within yourself in order for something new to emerge, quite spontaneously, I may add. And like I said, Taurus, of all the signs, you struggle with and resist, I would say the most, with that rapid rebellious change. Now, let's be honest here. Uranus has been the agent of the trigger of rebellion and change and, the opening of the third eye, so to speak, the higher consciousness that Uranus represents. It's been in your sign now since 2018. It's crazy to think about that it's been 6 years, but it has been, right? So Uranus has been in the sign of Taurus. It did retrograde back into Aries, but has been in the sign of Taurus basically since 2018. So this energy is not exactly brand new to you. You've been undergoing the rapid shifting of your personality landscape, your emotional landscape, your creative landscape since 2018. What is different now is that Venus is here, that Uranus is now coming into the territory of the Pleiades, right? The last degrees of Taurus. Jupiter is here, and you just had a conjunction in your sign with Jupiter and Uranus on 4/20, and this new moon is in your sign. Mercury has come out of its retrograde as of the beginning of the end of April, actually, has come out of its retrograde. And by the time we get to the full moon, let me back up. By the time we get to the first quarter moon, which will be in Leo, and for the Taurus rising, that is your 4th house of home and family, where you belong, where's your root system, where's your power coming from? If the 10th house, which is where Pluto is right now, is where your public profile resides, right? Where your power is released, the zenith of your destiny. The 4th house is the root system of you, right? Where you belong, where you're rooted, where is the core of your own power. And every time we do these forecasts, right? New moon, full moon, it's the moon at the quarter stage is in this area of the fourth house, right? Where your power really comes from. Because we tend to think that the power comes from our first, second, and third houses, right? Our personality, our ego, the world around us and what we value. Even the third house, right? Our own mind and conceptualization of our relationship to the world. It's really the fourth house where our power truly comes from. So we're gonna focus on that truly when we get to the first quarter moon in Leo. All right, Taurus. So let's get into it. So as you can see from the chart, it's really most of the energy of the solar system, with the exception of the south node of the moon and Lilith in your sixth house of getting our shit together. Everything is situated in this transition type of period for the Taurus rising, right? You're transitioning from the 11th and 12th houses, which is the social organism as a whole, the 12th house being the spiritual whole, and the house of endings, transitioning into a new creative potential of self, right? Subjective and objective, first and second houses. So you are truly going through a transition, an ending of a cycle and a beginning of a new one, right? And again, the full moon in Scorpio really highlighted those aspects about who you are and who you are in relation to whoever and whatever, right? Let's talk about the new moon. So that was exact last night, and I know this is a little late, and the timing is what it is, right? It's always perfect no matter when it is, right? As soon as we try to force things into our own ego's desire of time, we usually get bounced back. So here we are. We're still in the new moon phase as of today, right? Because the new moon was pretty late last night, almost at midnight Eastern Standard Time of the 8th. So the new moon phase lasts for the first 45 degrees of the moon's transit. So we're still in that sweet spot of intention and initiation. So 19 degrees of Taurus is a very interesting degree. It is in Sabian symbol language. In the Sabian symbols, if you're not familiar, it's like an astrological mandala. In fact, that is the book by Dane Rudger that uses each degree. Each degree has its own symbol attached to it, and it functions like a mandala, or it's like an astrological I Ching, if you're familiar with that, and also kind of like how tarot works. So 18 to 19 degrees Taurus is a new continent rising out of the ocean, the surge of new potential after the crisis. Now, I would say that the full moon in Scorpio was the highlight of the crisis, right? And the sun in Taurus, especially for you, Taurus, as an identified Taurus, is about what about you is gone and needs to be discarded into the past. What has to be left behind in order to return back to its source, in order to create a space for something new? Now, this new moon is asking you, asking all of us, but Taurus, very much to the essence of who you are, what's going to come out of that space? So when the mind has been emptied, and light has been called up to purify the consciousness, right? And there's been a lot of that lately, right? And the crisis tends to empty the consciousness, right? It tends to air things out in a lot of ways, right? And the consciousness becomes free from attachment because of the crisis that, frees it, basically, right? That purifies the consciousness, right? And we can all relate to a scenario or an event in our lives that was so upending or so dramatic that it actually just, cut those attachments like so profoundly. And sometimes they come through the actual literal process of death, right? You're losing someone in your life. And I know that that's been something very personal to me. And the Taurus, I'm surrounded by Taurus people. And going through this process there's been literal death in my immediate family. And so as I am, and it's not everybody, right? Other people are going through different types of identity death, but an ego death, right? That's a big part of it as well. So there needs to be there's a potential for new growth here, but there needs to be a space, and there often is some type of event that freeze the attachment. So when the mind has been emptied and light has been called up to purify the consciousness, now these are the words of Dane Rudhyar, by the way, these are not my words. A new release of life can emerge out of the infinite ocean of potential, right? Now, what happens? We can't predict this, right? We can't necessarily say this is exactly where this new surge is going to come from and how it's going to affect everything around it. We do know that it will surge, it will displace the water surrounding it, it will need to find its new equilibrium. So, Taurus, I'm just letting you know that this entire lunar cycle is really initiating this process of this new surge of potential, and to really allow it to come forward naturally. Now, I'm not suggesting that you do nothing, because that is the lazy part of Taurus, and be like, whatever, I'll just let it take me wherever. I'm going to tell you that when the Sun and Uranus come into conjunction in your sign, especially if you are a Sun in Taurus, there is such a high potential for risk-taking, dangerous behavior, people acting out. And this actually will be when Mercury comes out of its retrograde shadow. So that's going to be something we're going to focus a little bit more on when we get to it. But for now, I am just bringing up the new moon, and these are beginnings in unconsciousness, right? This is an initiation. This is the planting of the seed and being like, okay, let's see what happens. That's what is happening now, Taurus, is that and we all are feeling it. But Taurus, in terms of who you are as a person, right, or how you feel on the inside, something new is coming out based on what has already happened and has left a void in your life. Now, a lot of this, I think, has to do with Pluto in your 10th house. So your public profile is going through massive change because of the destructive process through the institutions, through your career, through what you're contributing to societally, the actual structures themselves in the 10th house. Now, Pluto is retrograde. So like I said, it's a fallow period. It's revealing what has already been destroyed, which can be very empty, right? It can be very difficult when this space is empty, especially when you are like, this is my career. This is the zenith of my destiny. This is my public and professional life, and it's being destroyed right now. The space that Pluto is left and that we are going to be sitting with the next how many months that Pluto is retrograde. And it's going to go back into Capricorn one last time to the 30 degrees of Capricorn. So it's going to shift right back into that 9th house for the Taurus rising, belief systems, overall big picture. That space is something worth embracing, being aware of, knowing that this void is necessary in order for something new to come out of it. Okay. Now, the thing about the full moon in Scorpio is that, yes, there are aspects about who you are that will change relationships. Absolutely. But the thing about Scorpio, especially being ruled by the planet Pluto, is that the soul is infinite. And so at the very bottom of the abyss of our own shadow, we recognize our infinite soul, right? And so there's a stability there to who you are, even as aspects of your personality or your emotional life are changing. So that's already been there. And so that can give you a sense of stability where you may feel unstable as aspects of your ego are dying or shifting or changing. And certainly with Pluto having this impact on your career as a Taurus rising or your public profile, this can be very difficult. But again, without the void, there is no possibility for new potential to surge. And that is the whole point of being in this incarnation, in this dimension of experience, is this process, the flower of life, right? So Venus, your ruling planet, is back home in your sign as well. So you're really just in your glory right now, Taurus, I have to say, right? Very sensitive to what is out of balance, very sensitive to what is valuable and meaningful to you, right? Very sensitive to the traditions that matter to you, the relationships. And you are exuding this quality. You are pulling in everything that you want, that satisfies you, right? And just very sensitive to that whole, to who you are and how you are in the world. So, and Venus is going to have her connections in this next 2 weeks. Now, there's a lot of beneficence, there's a lot of blessing, there's a lot of optimism and good fortune. We have Jupiter involved, we have Venus involved. They're both going to be in connection to um, Neptune over the next 2 weeks, which is finishing its transit of in Pisces, which is a big deal, actually, right? Neptune rules the sign of Pisces. The last degree of any sign is like culmination. It's like mastery. And so, yes, it's going to retrograde. It's not going to quite come into Aries yet, but it's the discernment that we each have to, I would say, be really adept at having with all the smoke and mirrors, right? It's like finding your way through the bardo, right? There's a reason that the Tibetan Book of the Dead, right? The Egyptian Book of the Dead, like everything about those traditions was about preparing the person for the dying process, right? And so for you, Taurus, maybe it is a literal death, but also it's about death of the self, right? In order to come into awareness of the infinite part of ourselves, right? And so that's a huge part of this. And you are a representative Taurus, right? So surge of new potential, that is really the initiatory point of this new moon. So let's start going through the play by play. Now today is the 8th, and we're already going to get an emotional preview of what the coming weeks are going to be like, because the moon is going to be meeting Uranus, it's going to be meeting Jupiter, it's going to sextile Neptune. And those are all things that are going to happen with the sun over the course of the next 2 weeks. So we're already kind of start feeling it subconsciously, okay? Especially with the moon and Uranus. It's a subconscious impulsiveness, right? Sudden events that can kind of cause upsets and disputes and significant change. Now, the thing about the moon and Uranus coming into a conjunction in your first house like this, Taurus, is that, or in your sign, is that you also have flashes of insight. Right? You have flashes of insight, and you should take them seriously about who you are, how you feel. You know, those things that are changing. And yeah, you can't control Uranus. That is not a personal planet. Just like Pluto is not a personal planet, Neptune's not a personal planet. These are larger transpersonal planets that influence us personally, and we respond to that. So we can't control what Uranus is doing, just like we can't control where that new continent is going to come out of the infinite potential. What we can do is pay attention to how we feel in those moments when something is triggered, right? When we have a flash of insight, take it seriously. Take a chance on yourself, right? You don't have to necessarily doubt yourself. You don't want to hold yourself back. Now, the thing about it says, one of the things about Moon and Uranus coming into conjunction is you don't want to hold yourself back by like tradition or a societal standard. Well, Taurus is very traditional. And so you have to, I would say, Taurus, be very aware of what is valuable to you, right? What is meaningful to you? Because that's going to have a big impact on how you embrace this kind of subconscious impulsiveness. And you can tell that things are changing. There's fluctuations in patterns that you are starting to feel. And it may seem weird and eccentric to other people. It's true. And you may have to kind of isolate and detach yourself from other people who don't understand or don't hold the same value of that you have for yourself. And that is okay, right? Because that is almost in some ways confirming your natural excellence, who you are, and shaping the vision to larger dimensions. And so it's directing all of your aspirations of yourself to something more than yourself, right? There's a personal display here, but it may seem weird to other people today. But once you come into conjunction, the moon comes into conjunction with Jupiter. Like I said, this is all kind of an emotional preview of what's going to be much more out in the open with the sun in the coming weeks. The moon meeting Jupiter is such a happy and content feeling. You want to play your role. You want to coax the depth of your soul into your experience, right? And you want to I would say, enjoy that role, right? And when you start things with the moon conjunct Jupiter, I mean, they tend to be very successful if they're based on good intentions. So you're feeling the impulsiveness, I think, early this morning, Taurus. And then by the time we get to this point, you're feeling very social, very optimistic. You're feeling that you want to spend quality time with people. You have this caring and supportive attitude. Other people can have a supportive and caring attitude towards you. Your warm feelings are contagious, and the warm feelings are based on this desire and pleasure of playing your role, whatever that role is, and being yourself, Taurus. I mean, that's really just all there is to it. Emotional and spiritual growth can be really rewarding when this happens. So there is this change that we're feeling, and you, Taurus, in your very nature of who you are. And then this conjunction with Jupiter happens, and you're like, oh, I feel so good. Like I really want to just be with people and share myself. And there's this warm camaraderie here. There's this pleasure in playing the role, right? Coaxing your soul into experience. Okay, now this is where it's going to get interesting, because the moon's going to move through the Pleiades, right? By the end of today, and is going to move into Gemini, and then it's going to trine Pluto, which is up in Aquarius in the 10th house. Now, let's move it forward here so you can see. There we go. Now, this is the second house for you, for Taurus rising, right? This is the house of your resources, right? Your value, your tradition, what is meaningful to you, what is yours, what is objectively valuable and meaningful to you. And when the moon comes into the second house, you become very sensitive to that. You become like a mouthpiece for the objective world, right? You're really picking up on intuitively and subconsciously the actual feels of the world around you energetically. Now, this trine to Pluto, there's going to be so many of these over the course of the weeks and months ahead, because as the moon, as Venus, as Mercury, and as Jupiter come into Gemini, they're all going to come into this trine, this 120-degree angle with Pluto, and have their own intensity, right, of Pluto revealing what has already been destroyed and the ramifications of that, and certainly the potential for regeneration. But that's not coming till later, because we have to go through this retrograde for a while. Now, something to keep in mind is that Pluto was in Aquarius in the same area during the French Revolution. So if you're not familiar with the French Revolution, you may want to familiarize yourself a little bit with what was going on there, because the defiance of a social setting, a social organism that becomes unbearable. When you have Pluto involved, it is deeply powerful and destructive. And of course, regeneration comes, but not without a cost, right? And if you're familiar with the French Revolution, it became a bloodbath, right? I mean, people were just being executed left and right constantly. And the tribunals, right, were just out of control. And this is the runaway train of that defiance and repudiation, because of the oppression of the working class and the peasantry by the nobility. So what's very interesting is that the moon in Gemini, 3 degrees Gemini, is the Sabian symbol is the Garden of the Tuileries, right, in Versailles. This is the period of time of the nobility and the aristocracy in France. So the fact that the moon is here at this degree in a trine to Pluto, it was in the same position as the French Revolution. There's something very important for you to pay attention here, Taurus, because especially with where the Sun and Uranus are going to come into a conjunction, the potential here for very dangerous risk-taking when the Sun and Uranus come together without an awareness of this within yourself can be very dangerous. And this particular transit, I think, is very important in terms of really becoming aware of what you're feeling. It'll be very powerful feelings. They can be very transforming by your emotional reaction with the moon in a trine to Pluto, right? You're likely to be moved very deeply by something here, and there's a strong karmic pull between you and any destiny you encounter. There's subconscious communication here. This is a moment where psychological self-analysis is very much favored. You can access the deeper and darker areas of your own subconscious with this connection to Pluto. I think it's very important that you know the difference between creative stability, which allows you to participate in the full satisfaction of what is developed between you and others, especially in terms of resources, and what is complete selfishness and lording it over other people. So you can see the two sides there of, how the Garden of the Tuileries in Paris, how it represented a very, it's the best of times and it was the worst of times. It's the opening line of A Tale of Two Cities, which is all about this time period, right? It was through the Enlightenment, but through the Enlightenment, you have this really destructive process going on. Taurus, I would just, and for everybody, but especially as the moon comes through the second house of value and tradition, this is your house, right? To be very aware of yourself. And this would be a really great time to tap deeper into those often hidden areas in order to, and they're exposed with the retrograde of Pluto right now, very much exposed. It's like an open wound that needs to be cleaned out and tended to, but you have to actually see the wound and have it be open in order to do that. This trine is going to give all of us, but especially the Taurus people, the capacity to really perceive in terms of what you value. What do you really value? What is valuable and meaningful to you based on what you are experiencing in terms of your public profile, your professional life, your career, right? Those the destruction of those institutions, because it's going to say a lot about where you actually are and what you're picking up on in the world around you. So this is going to be important later. These are just these stirrings subconsciously that are happening in today, right? The moon moving through Gemini, which is the 8th, and then tomorrow, Thursday, the 9th. And so as we go through, the moon's going to be in Cancer over the weekend, which is Mother's Day. And of course, as Moon in Cancer is always incredibly sensitive, incredibly moody. And for you, this is your third house, right? And picking up on patterns in your own mind, right? And the world right around you, your communication with people, your short-term travel in the third house, and the way that you interact with the environment directly around you. It's how your nervous system is functioning in the third house, right? It is that first germination, the seed, right, pops up from the soil and is reaching towards the light. That is the third house, right? It's after this weekend, actually, that we're going to start seeing some movement again, right? And we're also coming into the crescent moon phase, which is the time period where you start to actually experience any type of obstacle that may come out in terms of that initiation of the new moon. So we go through Mother's Day, the moon will come through Cancer, and it's really going to be on Monday the 12th that we start to see, for you, the sun in Taurus is going to be in a conjunction with Uranus, and we're going to go over that in terms of the real change, the unexpected change, and this really strong urge to rebel in who you are. And Venus in your sign, your ruling planet, in a sextile to Saturn. The other thing that's going to be happening, as you can see, is the moon comes into the very last degree of Cancer and is in a trine to Neptune in the very last degree of Pisces. So this is also a very stable, emotionally stable, very heightened connection here with our own personal feelings, and Neptune in Pisces in the 11th house of the social organism as a whole. And as Neptune has been dissolving all boundary in terms of the social organism as a whole, whether that's your associations, that's the nature of your extended family, if that is the human family for you, whatever the 11th house is, your community, your friends and associates. The 11th house is the audience that receives your gift of the 5th house, for instance. So the fog is so thick here with Neptune coming into this last degree, right? We are just surrounded by the smoke and mirrors of the Bardo, and this is in the social organism as a whole for the Taurus rising people. The moon in these last degree of Cancer is going to be like, okay, but my own sense of who I am and the world around me, what's right in front of me, really holding fast to that, right? Because yes, as society is going through its dissolution, and it has been for years with Neptune in the 11th house like this for Taurus rising, this moon is just, it's very personal, and it's very sensitive to the traditions that have and the conservative nature of that which roots us and gives us a sense of belonging, right? And it'll be right in front of you, Taurus. It'll be in your own immediate environment. And in fact, the trine to Neptune, like I said, it's very stabilizing and it's very, very powerful. So let's start to unpack this because this is a big one. The sun conjunct Uranus in your sign, right? It's a time of excitement and unexpected change. So come Monday, you're really going to be feeling the freedom and rebellion, and a strong urge to break free from routine, or a strong urge to break free from who you've been, right? You're going to feel that urge and you're going to like command it and exude this authority. You feel restless and nervous tension, and it's really important with all the things related to this. And it's conjunct the Pleiades. So if you have bad empathic boundaries, Taurus, if you find yourself enabling as opposed to being an empath, right? If you find that you have poor emotional boundaries, all of the negative aspects of the Pleiadian nature, it's going to be very important that you take some initiative here. And if you're on the other side of the Taurus scope of just like resisting the change and being really stubborn, you're also going to manifest very unpleasant changes because you can't resist this, right? So the best thing you can do is to be flexible, be open-minded, realize that you could be opening up to new levels of awareness about yourself, right? And you can meet new and unconventional people. There could be new and thrilling experiences. And again, 24 Taurus is a mounted warrior riding fiercely. This is incredible. But the negative side to this, and again, this is where this moon trine Pluto the day today, and this is next Monday, if we're not really being honest with ourselves and doing the dark shadow work here, each of us, but for you especially, Taurus, the negative expression of a sun conjunct Uranus like this is impulsive and unnecessary risk-taking, rebelling against authority just for the sake of it. Now, teenagers, that's what you do, right? And so there's probably going to be some measure of that anyway, but it can be very dangerous. Okay, and so you want to work with this energy consciously with a sense of awareness of who you are, who you're not, who you're letting go of, who you want to be, so that you don't get confronted with aggressive reactions from other people because you're just rebelling for the sake of it. And it is really very highly probable that this will happen. But there's excitement and unexpected change that is going to reinforce your own power, right? Your own authority over yourself and the world around you as much as you can, at least. So this is something to look forward to. The other thing that's happening, like I said, Venus, your ruling planet, in a sextile to Saturn. Now, this is about commitment, right? This is about a serious type of commitment. This is about resolutions and mutual understanding and acknowledgement, right? Especially when a relationship has run its course. And I would say this has to do with what has run its course in terms of society as a whole, right? The social organism that you're part of, right? Your associates, your friends, your networks, your community, right? We're all in this together, and we all have to find our place within it. And that's what Saturn is representing for you, Taurus, is the responsibility of that. Even with Neptune here dissolving all of the boundaries, there's still a responsibility to be present and to have some sort of form and leadership here, right? it's very practical and common sense approach with Venus in a sextile here, and Venus is it's in your sign, right? So it's about you purifying your ego consciousness, and in that process, it allows you to really dramatize yourself in a very public way as necessary, right? Now, this type of practical common sense approach, this committed situation, along with the Sun and Uranus in a conjunction, I think is really very useful in finding resolution, right? Mutual understanding, doing business that is very grounded in reality here. And also, Venus in Taurus is very creative, right? She is very creative and likes to bring things into creation. So this would be a really good time to use those talents within yourself in order to find resolution, in order to achieve some sort of mutual understanding, especially when a relationship has run its course and needs to change because you are changing. This sextile is you may not like the responsibility with Saturn in Pisces like this in the 11th house, but it will kind of force everyone to dramatize themselves it's like going into a circus, right? Everything plays its role, and Saturn is kind of the ringleader here in this situation, and maybe it's in the process of you, Taurus, like really just purifying yourself, right? Airing out your own ego and sense of self that allows for that you to step into that role, right? That kind of ringleader role in your own social environment. So that's, and then, like I said, the moon is in Cancer. Now, what you'll also notice is that Mercury has come out of its shadow, its retrograde shadow. So this is a big day on Monday the 13th. There's a lot that's going to be happening leading up to this and on this day. And the moon in Cancer is going to make it very personal. It's going to make us very sensitive to it emotionally. And the square to Mercury is definitely going to make people very moody and wanting to be very opinionated about what people should or shouldn't be doing. And Mercury is still in the 12th house for you, but it's coming out of its shadow. And so there's something in the background, there's something in the spiritual work, Taurus, that you may not be necessarily outwardly speaking, right? You may not be projecting out into, but you will emotionally be projecting it because the moon in the 3rd house, right? You'll definitely be feeling it. You'll be picking up on the patterns of things. Perhaps it's about doing the inner work. And as Mercury comes out of its retrograde shadow, meaning it leaves the degree that it first stationed retrograde, which is the Andromeda galaxy, right? There's going to be a lot of people that are not able to really do the work and take responsibility for their actions. They really won't. And Taurus, I would say in your case, be aware of the patterns, right? And perhaps keep those types of kind of opinionated aspects maybe to yourself, right? Maybe that's where the work needs to be happening. Doesn't mean you can't pick up on them. Doesn't mean you won't feel them. You'll definitely feel them in the 3rd house. And there may be some emotional expression of things. But I would recommend that if you're having a hard time, or you're having a hard time being on the receiving end of people who are just like, I'm going to tell you what to do, just realize that this is something that is operating in the background for you with Mercury in your 12th house. It's going to be coming into your 1st house very soon. So just let it do the internal work. If you're feeling the contradictions, let it be the internal work. Maybe it's happening through meditation. Maybe you are creating some sort of artistic piece that is helping you express this. Maybe you're just journaling, right? Whatever it is, it's really happening in the background, in the spirit, but you will be feeling it in your immediate environment. I would say just be aware that not everybody's going to be very graceful about this, okay? And that's for the people that did not really embrace this full moon in Scorpio and see it for what it was, okay? So take care of yourself, Taurus, and don't get pushed into anger necessarily. That Venus sextile Saturn, I think, is really going to help keep the Taurus person very stabilized and fixed in their own nature. Not stubborn, but realizing that there needs to be things that are cleansed out of the sense of who you are in order to move forward. And not even that, just to make sure the space is there for something new to arise. So that's happening. Next week is very big. The first quarter moon is on the 15th, as we're going to see, which is Wednesday, and that's going to be in Leo. And we're also going to see that Mercury moves into your sign as well. So Mercury comes into the first house, comes into Taurus. Everything with the Mercury retrograde in Aries, it's been fresh, it's been new, it's been bold, it's been spontaneous. Even in its retrograde, it's still been working with that fresh energy of seed point and potentiality. Now it's coming into Taurus as of the 15th, and things mentally are going to become much more fixed in tradition, in value, and the value of who you are, right? And projecting it out there, right? With the Mercury in your sign or in your first house, and the square from the moon to the sun, which is a first quarter square. Now, this is always a crisis in action. So it's going to be a big week starting Monday, leading into this point. Because the quarter moons usually are the actual crisis points. The full moons and the new moons, or the new moons and full moons, are the beginnings, right? They're not these sometimes they're outrageous. I would say that the full moon in Scorpio was a really massive emotional release. But the quarter moons on either side are when we feel the crisis, the tension, right? The thing we have to resolve by leaning into the discomfort. And for you, Taurus, I mean, the quarter moon in your fourth house, right, which is home and family, where your power comes from. As you, as a Taurus person, and the sun being in this position, you start to really identify with the role you're playing. The quarter moon is asking, I think, and drawing your emotional awareness to, the potential for the storm to pass in terms of the home and family life, right? Where your power comes from. And just because you are identified with the role that you're playing and knowing that it's a natural process doesn't mean that you become so fixated on you as the role. Ooh, I'm getting a big one on this one. That the quarter square is bringing that emotional awareness to there is a revelation of worth in this area that needs to be attended to, right? For the Taurus people. It's not going to be the same for everyone, but for the Taurus person in particular, I do get the sense here that, you can't be over-identified with the role you're playing, that there is more to you than just the ego identity. There is where you belong, where your root system is, where your power actually comes from, the nadir, right? The fourth house cusp and the fourth house. And this is home and family, where you belong, where you're committed to, right? And there is a rainbow, right? After the heavy storm, a rainbow. That's where the, and there's Pleiadian energy all over this. There's Atlantis energy all over this with these degrees of Leo as well. And so there is something to be said for the discomfort that's going to come up, and the ability to be in both places at once is really going to be essential, I think, for this first quarter moon in particular. Now, right after this on the 17th, I mean, it just keeps going. That's the thing. Next week is huge for all of us, but definitely for the Taurus people. The 17th, Mercury, now in Taurus, comes into a square with Pluto. So we come back to Pluto again, retrograde in Aquarius. When you have Mercury in a square to Pluto, it leads to very deep thinking and intense interaction. So we're already kind of in this place where there's, this really strong urge to break free from something in terms of who you've been and who you are becoming, right, Taurus? And then Venus is assisting in that process with Saturn as well. It's just like we're all coming together, playing our role, and there is a part of ourselves that acting as there's a responsibility to be the director in some cases of our own experience within the whole, the social organism. But this Mercury square Pluto leads to very deep thinking, intense interactions with other people, right? And sometimes people can become very coercive. And with Mercury in your first house like this, I mean, I would say that um, it could become very extreme, and you could force people or convince other people of other things. People are trying to force or convince you of other things, and the more criticism and conflict you're going to meet, the more that you try to force and convince people of other things. So you may naturally become very defensive under this influence. Now remember, Pluto is retrograde, so it's really just showing us what has already been destroyed. And I think that is going to have more of an impact on the deep thinking than anything else. And you don't want to let your fighting spirit back you into a corner, right? You definitely want to become mentally aware of who you are naturally becoming, right? Yes, there is an emptiness in terms of where your public and professional life has been, Taurus, or where your destiny has been with, and Pluto having its impact, right? It's going to challenge your thinking, which can result from or lead to a crisis of experience with the dark side of humanity. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's also an urge to dig deeper and investigate the truth of the matter. And Taurus, because Scorpio is your opposition, because we're talking about Pluto here, I would say that this is another one of those opportunities that this square, Mercury square Pluto, which is, the middle of next week into, let's see, it's Friday the 17th, right? There's an urge to dig deeper, investigate the truth, get to the bottom of who you are, and know where this naturally leads, okay? There's an excellent potential to uncover secrets and mysteries that really deepen your own understanding of yourself, right? And it's important that you take the high road. There's going to be so many people that don't. And so it's essential that you do, right? Taking the high road by maintaining an open mind and not arguing for the sake of it, right? Positive transformation could come out of this, but it's going to be very, very intense. Now, the 18th is another Uranus type of thing where Venus and Uranus come into a conjunction, 24 degrees of Taurus, right? That mounted warrior riding fiercely. Now, when these two come into conjunction, you're getting change and excitement in love and money, or both, right? Especially when we're talking about Taurus. And there's an increased need for stimulation that leads to sudden changes in these areas as well. And you may be subject to the unexpected changes around you. And I would say, again, this comes to the very essence of who you are, your personality. So if things have become stagnant and routine, this is Saturday. You're more likely to rebel. So you got to find ways to experience this in a healthy way, right? Healthy stimulation in some way, right? And of course, if you're talking about relationships, this is about finding some fun and stimulation in that relationship by finding novelty in some way, right? I mean, Venus loves novelty, especially in her home sign of Taurus, right? She wants to enjoy herself. You may enjoy increased attention and excitement, especially if there's like new romance with this, but I would say that this is also just like the intensity of your command and authority over yourself. And I do see that you could kind of force the issue in some ways so you can feel this stimulation. You may find yourself, antagonizing people in order to feel this sense of command and authority. It's possible, but also thrills can be found with something that is like, I know this is crazy, but like shopping, right? Or impulse buying and things that you spend within your budget, right? But there may be things that come out of nowhere. So Venus and Uranus, when they're together like this, especially in Taurus, there could be a financial windfall. Absolutely. And surprises may come in like gifts or invitations or compliments. It's very possible. So by next Saturday, wow, there could be another sudden change that comes into value and tradition and meaning that comes up, right? And then the sun is in conjunction with Jupiter and Taurus. Boy, Taurus, you are really getting hit in so many ways that it's just so intense. So Sun conjunct Jupiter, wow, such a great transit. Well-being, happiness, optimism, good luck, spiritual growth, opportunities for personal and professional growth as well. I would say that this is also just going to give a sense of perspective, right? mature understanding because you see both sides of an issue, right? And you feel a strong urge or desire to experience everything fully. So you may also find yourself putting yourself into positions or and this goes along with the Venus conjunct Uranus, like experiencing new things in order to get both sides of a situation. But ultimately, there's a lot of happiness and well-being with the Sun and Jupiter coming together. Now, the word expansion applies to all areas of life here. So, this is a really good time for new studies, long distance travel. Social wealth is a big part of Jupiter. And in Taurus, it's very palpable. Things started now will turn out positively in the long run with Sun conjunct Jupiter. This is a huge blessing. The thing to understand about the negatives about this transit is that it gets too big. You get too boastful. You get too greedy, right? And you may be greedy for experience in order to understand and gain perspective. So you don't want to be pushing too much. Because as a Taurus person, once you get rolling, it's really hard to stop this train. So yes, it's important to gain perspective, but you don't want to be so greedy for those experiences. And again, Venus and Uranus together, you very well could find yourself pushing the boundary a little bit too much in order to get these experiences. So you have to be conscious of this potential for extravagance, right? You don't want to just like go beyond your own boundaries here. Use some moderation, but you still will gain, I think, a mature understanding and gain perspective here. And then the 19th into the 20th, this is a really important day. So this is Sunday into Monday the 20th. So we're getting close to the end of this forecast here. Because what I want to show you here is that, yes, the Sun and Jupiter came into this conjunction. And then what you find here is that Neptune, the Sun, and Venus soon are all going to be coming into this relationship. So first and foremost, it is the Sun and Neptune in a sextile. They're both in the last degrees of the signs that they're in, which for Neptune is really, really powerful, right? So let me see here. Let's format this. All right. Sun sextile Neptune very generally heightens your sensitivity, your intuition, your imagination, increased psychic awareness. You get valuable insight here about yourself, the people around you, your future, right? This is a really good time to visualize or dream up your ideal future. And this requires some incredible discernment in the bardo, so to speak, with Neptune and Pisces, the smoke and mirrors, the fog of war, the imagination, the dreams, the fantasies, the delusions, the illusions, all of it is all here. It's all one. It all comes from the Creator, no matter what. This sextile gives really strong insight into who you are becoming and the big picture of it. So make new goals here, right? A lot is changing and you're feeling a lot of stir of change within yourself, Taurus. So when you get to this point, make new goals, turn your dreams into reality. This is the type of transit that does it. An ideal time to express that idealistic and caring side of yourself, right? You may feel a boost in your self-esteem and personal satisfaction by getting involved in any type of activity that is catering to people, right? Greater empathy, receptivity by both you and the people around you, your relationships really benefit. This is a very positive transit, but you have to participate in it. It's a sextile. So yes, you can feel more creative, intuitive, imaginative. You have to actually visualize your ideal future, who you are, who you're becoming, and the big picture here, the biggest picture. And now turning your dreams into reality means you can visualize that. What is your ideal future? And it's something more than just yourself. You are part of a line of tradition and ancestry that is well beyond just you and your ego. And I think that is a big part here of the purifying of the ego consciousness, the death of the Taurus ego, and creating space for something new to come in. Because now you can be whoever you want. Right? We can turn our dreams into reality, all of us, right? And visualize our ideal future. This is the perfect transit for that. Because then the Sun comes into Gemini on the 20th. And the 22nd is when that Sun trines Pluto. Now, remember what I talked about when the moon was in a trine to Pluto, which was, hey, it's really essential here that you do that inner work, and whatever you're picking up on and those powerful perceptions about your darker side of yourself, it's going to come out now, and it's going to be acted on. Now, Sun trine Pluto, intense and profound experiences. Whatever you're interested in now, you're going to be driven to research and investigate the inner working. So you already got a sense of this, and now you're going to be really driven for positive transformation. You have more power and influence over your life, and you can exert this power and influence over the events in your life, as long as you realize that you are not, trying to control people around you, right? And so for the most part, things should go well in relationships with people in positions of power, large organizations, and maybe that just means like you leaving them, right? Because Pluto is retrograde in the house of your career, Taurus rising. Pluto rules elimination, so you can use this transit to clear away the clutter. So so a lot's been cleared away already. So this type of transit's like, okay, it's been cleared away, so now it's time to really get deeper into the inner workings of this situation and really resolve some professional problems a lot more easily right now. You can take on a leadership role. You can improve your self-esteem. There's just so much positive change that comes out of a Sun trine Pluto, and to study the mysteries, right? Deep investigation and personal transformation is such a huge part of this transit, okay? Which is really, really awesome. And the moon is in Scorpio, right? It's coming back to where the full moon was. So we're coming back around to where that full moon was to begin with. And now we're getting a different sense of things. It will be in a trine to Saturn, which is very stabilizing. It makes things very practical and self-reliant here in terms of the moon in the area of who you are in relationship. And then the full moon is on the 23rd, right? It's actually in Sagittarius, which is the realm of shared resources. It also is when Venus and Jupiter are conjunct with each other. Now, these are the two benefics, right? This is very beneficial. The full moon, though, I would say, is going to highlight Taurus. It's going to highlight the transcendent ritualization of the conflict in terms of the inner conflict, right? The deeply emotional conflict in relationship, right? And at the same time, Venus is going to conjunct Jupiter at this time, and this is one of the most benefic types of transits coming together, where perspective is going to be very much gained here. Inner harmony, warmth, friendliness, right? You enjoy the benefits of the good karma that's been accrued, right? So if you've been doing the work and really taking advantage of all these transits in terms of your change and your growth, this transit at the full moon, this Venus conjunct Jupiter in your sign, wow, it's just going to be so much, you'll be exposed to so many greater opportunities for growth and happiness because of the perspective that you are gaining about conflict in your life, right? And Taurus people don't really like conflict because they don't like to be moved, right? They just want to be as they are. And so conflict can be very difficult. And for the Taurus rising, I mean, the catalyzing fire is in the space where relationships merge and the energy is generated, and without that friction there is no catalyzing fire that transmutes. And I think that the Taurus people are going to come to really understand this and have this Venus conjunct Jupiter at the same time. Not even just Venus conjunct Jupiter, Venus is going to sextile Neptune. I mean, it's going to arouse all of these sensual and caring aspects of you, Venus and Taurus, right? Taurus people. And even Jupiter is going to sextile Neptune. This is huge, right? Good intentions, optimism, moral integrity, growth, and good fortune. Wow. All of these things combined for you, Taurus, is just outrageous in a good way. There's so much potential for understanding here and a lot of beneficence. And the full moon really highlighting the transcendent nature of conflict. It's like playing chess, right? And in the realm of the space, what is generated in relationship. If you can take yourself out of and get that mature understanding, and there's so much assistance for it with Venus and Jupiter and Neptune all connected to each other like this. I mean, look at the chart. I would say the only conflict really, besides the full moon, which is an opposition, right? It is a opposition in consciousness, right? Is this opposition with Lilith and Saturn, right? In terms of your gift and the audience that receives your gift. And Lilith is so powerful if we don't try to fill the gap ourselves, right? That if we can see the need to emulate and work together, as a passionate expression, I think that what we'll find is that we will kind of receive the teaching, if that makes sense, in terms of the society. It may not be exactly what we want, and that's the whole point of Lilith, right? We can't be forcing the issue. We have to realize that it's, again, comes all the way back to the space within us is where the divine intervention comes in and the new potential emerges and surges out of that void. But without that void, there's no possibility. And that void is created quite naturally and physically by the destructive process of Pluto. So, my friends, I'm going to leave it there for today. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, there my email is in the description. The website is in the description box. If you're interested in weekly astrology and some other benefits with monthly membership, you can find the link to Subscribestar in the description box below. Taurus, wow, incredible times for you. You're going through really big change in who you are, and I would really just enjoy the ride, but also take full advantage of the experience as it is, because Taurus people, you know, you are so connected to the oscillation of life as it is, that you can really embody this experience and enjoy it. But it does require that you have you experience both sides of things in order to find the transcendence and to transmute that experience into something more than just what you are experiencing. Yes, you are changing. Yes, you are going through massive overhaul of who you are, and that is inevitably going to change the nature of all of your relationships. But when those relationships change, we still interact with them, and we still generate and produce something more than ourselves. And if you can take yourself personally out of the conflict and see the bigger picture, I think that you're going to have an incredible month over the next 4 weeks as you're going through serious change in your life. So thank you, Taurus, for being here. I truly appreciate all of you so very much. I will see you on the next video. Take care, everyone.